Hello everyone, I'm interviewing David Kurten, a London Assembly member for UKIP. David, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Lovely that you can come to City Hall and see me here.
Yeah, it's a lot more round than I was expecting. I was expecting like an old building, you know, made of stone that was built maybe in the Victorian era.
You know, the old County Hall is opposite Parliament actually. It's by Westminster Bridge, really nice, but that's now the Marriott Hotel.
Oh.
But they built this new building when the GLA was re-established in 2000 and when London got a devolved assembly. So here we are. I was elected in 2016. So time flies. I'm elected for 4 years, and here I am over halfway through my term. It's like no time at all, really. So,
really? Okay. So could you tell people about the London Assembly and what it is you do?
Sure. I mean, the London Assembly is really a scrutiny body. It doesn't make legislation, but its main focus is to scrutinise the mayor, who at the moment is Sadiq Khan. Obviously, someone I don't have much in common with in terms of opinion, so it's very good that we've actually got UKIP members here to scrutinise him. So that's what we do, and every month there's a mayor's question time, which is very long actually. It goes on for about 3 hours. And there's 25 assembly members. We all get one question roughly to ask him about, you know, what he said or what he thinks or what he's doing. So I usually end up asking him either about Brexit, quite a lot of the time, or recently President Trump, because he and his staff wanted this hideous, insulting balloon blimp to fly over Parliament Square, and that's something that a lot of people really weren't happy about, because it's a gross insult to the president, you know, and it does a lot of damage to the relationship between the city, the nation, and the United States. And so, you know, I was the only person, I mean, UKIP was the only group that actually made any kind of noise in opposition to Sadiq Khan and his staff allowing this to happen. So
yeah,
these are the kind of things that I ask him about. So it's really good that I'm here and I can represent people who wouldn't otherwise have a voice.
Well, that's a great great point, because I mean the Trump blimp was, I found it actually kind of disappointing. I was expecting it to be much bigger and flown much higher.
It was actually very small.
Yeah.
It was a lot of noise, and it was very
It
wasn't up to much at the end of the day.
No, it absolutely was. But I mean, it really annoyed me, because one of the things, like, I think Britain as a country needs to be aware of is the fact that America is our biggest ally. We're currently leaving the European Union, and Donald Trump keeps offering us excellent cutting-edge trade deals. And so watching the Remainers and, broadly speaking, the lefties trying to effectively insult the commander-in-chief of our strongest and currently most important ally just seems like a very silly thing to do, and very self-indulgent. In a way, but so you get to grill Sadiq Khan on a regular basis.
I do.
Would you like to tell people about how that's going? I've seen a couple of viral clips of it. And it was very.
He doesn't like being questioned by UKIP, I don't think. No, sometimes it goes fine, but usually, you know, we ask questions that he thinks, you know, people shouldn't have a right to ask, if you like. So. You know, this week, as a case in point, he's thrown his weight behind this People's Vote campaign for a second referendum, which is basically the loser Ramonas trying to overturn the referendum. You know, the decision of 17.4 million people to leave the European Union, and they're the only people who want a second referendum are the people who didn't win the first referendum. And so, you know, I questioned him about it, and one of the questions I put to him was that you said soon after the referendum, you know, we need to respect the vote. Now you're saying you want a second referendum. I said, why are you disagreeing with yourself? And, he didn't like that answer at all. So you can see the clip. It's elsewhere, but you know, these are the kind of things I ask him about. Yeah. And so unfortunately, I only have 6 minutes every month to question the mayor. It's very, very limited time.
But that is 6 minutes more than the rest of us.
True.
So that's excellent.
You know, people write to me, ask, you know, they say what they'd like me to ask and make suggestions. So, you know, I try to use my time to, you know, put people's questions across from the public if they want to as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Right, okay, let me ask you about Brexit then. I assume you're a Leave voter?
No. I'm just pretending. No, of course I'm a Leave voter. I mean, I joined UKIP in 2012. So I've been in UKIP nearly 6 years now, and I joined UKIP for two reasons. I mean, one was because I was very concerned about how the European Union was going, and particularly with this TTIP deal, which was a deal between the EU and the USA, but it wasn't a good deal. It was a deal that would have set up these corporate courts and taken power another level away from the people than power had already been taken with the European Union. So they were taking it from the people, we're going to give it to these unaccountable corporate courts. And so, there was concerns about this across the political spectrum, but I thought in this country, the Lib Lab Con, the three parties of the establishment, were all for it. The only two parties that were ever going to fight this were UKIP and the Green Party, but the Green Party have got some crazy ideas and some other things, so they weren't ever an option for me. So I joined UKIP, simply for that reason. But the other thing I was also very concerned was the rampant political correctness, which really is just getting out of control now. And I saw Nigel Farage, who wants to leave the European Union, but he's also was someone who stood up against political correctness and just, basically said things as they are. Talked to some guy down the pub or some guy, in the car park in Asda or whatever, or in the coffee shop, and that's the views of the majority of the people. But when you see the establishment and the establishment media throwing all kinds of slurs and mud and smears at someone just for saying something that's common sense, I started to question, what's all this about? Why is the entire establishment trying to stop someone from just having or speaking or saying a common sense opinion? So I thought, this was intriguing. So I joined UKIP, and since I joined, I've been very welcome. I found people, almost all the people very friendly, and just ordinary people who want their country back, who are proud of this country, who think this is a good country with a good history, and we want our independence back, and we want to be the great country that we've always been through history. So that's why I joined UKIP, and that's why I'm for Brexit, coming back to the original question. And it's really taking back control of our country. It's just for the ordinary people. I think we need to run our economy for the sake of British businesses. Small and medium-sized businesses are the backbone of the country. Employees, British customers. We shouldn't be running our economy or our country for the benefit of global behemoths, who basically register for tax in another country, and they carry on trading because they're loaded up with debt. So that they get a sort of unfair advantage, and they use the EU to write laws and rules in their favour.
And I actually, for anyone watching, I have a great example of this. Currently, Google, their European headquarters is in Ireland and not Britain for tax reasons. They get to pay less tax, and I receive money from YouTube, from advertising revenue from Google Ireland, and that's a perfect example of it in action.
Yeah,
this is, and it is serving these corporations, and they take advantage of it, and they know it.
No, nothing against big business if they play fair. If they play by the same rules as everyone else. But why should someone who's big, have an unfair advantage over the little guy? And I think that's what Brexit's all about.
I agree. I completely agree. To me, it seems like a subconscious rebalancing of power across society, and I felt that Donald Trump was the same. I like the mug. I just noticed it. I felt that Donald Trump was very much the same sort of effect.
Really?
It felt like the little guy, the small people. Like you said, the backbone of the country, the people who just go do their jobs. They watch their soaps, and they pay their taxes, and they're good citizens. And they were essentially saying, right, okay, enough is enough. You're drawing away from us on all things. Like you say, it's an extra layer of like a distance from the tax-paying voting bloc base. And how do you keep that accountable? And the way is to say, no, we're not going to accept that, and draw it back and kind of decentralize things again. So, how do you feel about Theresa May's Chequers plan?
You know, the Chequers plan is a disaster.
Would you like to explain?
Nobody likes the Chequers plan. I mean, she seems to be the only person that likes it. Perhaps, chief negotiator Ollie Robbins, this civil servant from the bureaucracy, likes it as well. But the EU doesn't like it. They're not going to go for it. The Brexiteers don't like it because it it separates Northern Ireland from Great Britain, drawing a regulatory border down the Irish Sea, which is absolutely wrong. The Remainers don't like it. Nobody likes it, but she seems to be stubbornly sticking to this deal, which is no good for anybody. But I think she's trying to have something where, well, this is bad for you, this is bad for you, this is bad for you, so let's all agree. I think that maybe that's her thinking, which is rather insane. I mean,
Theresa May, negotiator extraordinaire.
It's actually worse than the Norway option, and that's a bad option in itself.
Well, it's the most baffling thing, because as far as I can tell, I read the Chequers plan, obviously, and it seemed like she was effectively trying to submit to the European Union. She was effectively going into the negotiations by conceding everything they could possibly ask for. And I thought, okay, well, at least the European Union can't possibly refuse this. And Barnier and Verhofstadt were just like, no, we're not going to accept this. And it's like, well, if she can't even surrender to the European Union, what more could they possibly ask for? And how could anyone look at that and say, well, that's a reasonable thing? Theresa May is going there on her knees to these people.
The European Union wants to keep us in. They don't want Brexit.
Of course.
They want our money. But the first thing she conceded was £39 billion, which was... You don't concede that amount of money at the start of a negotiation.
It's insane.
You say, look, we want this and this and this, and then, at the end, you might concede something like that. The point is that you don't concede your money because
that's
it
the
would
most
be
valuable thing.
Exactly. It would be mutually beneficial to us to have a trading partnership.
Of course.
We don't need to give the EU any money because our trade, we're in trade deficit with the EU. So they would win, we would win, everyone's a winner. But she seems to be, instead of going for win-win, she's going for lose-win. That's what she's doing.
They can win, we can lose.
We lose, they win. This is an insane way to do a negotiation.
I totally agree. And what I found is the polling, it was about a month ago I saw the poll, but it's something like no Brexit, a hard Brexit, no deal Brexit was 30% of the population was polling on that. And then 28% were staying, effectively remain in the single market. And there were a few other options that were a bit irrelevant. And then Theresa May's Chequers plan on 7%. And it's just like, wow, she couldn't do a worse job if she tried.
They're probably people that just have sympathy for her. I don't think she deserves any sympathy.
No,
really, it's no good.
Totally agree. Right, okay, so changing tack slightly. What do you make of the YouTubers joining UKIP? Paul Joseph Watson, myself, and Cam Dankula. How do you feel about that?
I think it's great. I'm really happy that you joined, and it's funny the timing because I remember at the time I was involved in the Lewisham East by-election, and there was this incident in the hustings where there was a left-wing mob. Basically of thugs.
Surprise.
They closed down the hustings and the police came, and instead of dispersing the mob and sending them away, the hustings was closed down. This was people from the public, candidates like myself from political parties, and we couldn't hold a political meeting. Because there was this lefty group of thugs that closed it down. Then the by-election happened, and I remember the next week you joined and Dankula and Paul Joseph Watson. I think it's fantastic. I followed all of you for a long time on YouTube. I love the stuff you do because you're funny. Genuinely funny. I look at left-wing humour and it's just so dry and dull. It's full of this hideous identity politics trying to be right on, but you guys are genuinely funny. So I was like, well, this is great. That you joined the party. It's wonderful. So it's really good to have you in.
Do you know what's really weird? Is that like when you were saying UKIP's the party of normal people, that's exactly how I feel about it. Since I've come in, everyone's just been really nice, really relaxed, really chilled, and just really welcoming of us. And it's really nice to see that. I don't feel like I'm in a party where I would have to modulate what I say so much, you know, because I'm happy to become edgy on the internet, you know, but everyone in UKIP's just like, yeah, okay, no worries. You know,
well, you would have to modulate what you say in any other party you're in. I mean, imagine, you know.
UKIP's the only party in the entire country that supports free speech.
Well, we do. I mean, this is a very important thing, and it goes back to what I was saying about political correctness earlier. I mean, political correctness is trying to stop you from saying what is not deemed to be politically correct by whoever decides what is politically correct, and anything outside that then is deemed to be hate speech or a hate crime, and it is just becoming more and more of a beast every week. I mean, you see sort of things. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, people were told in the University of Kent or something, you can't wear a Mexican hat because this is offensive to Mexicans. I don't think there's any Mexicans who said that.
Where are they though? It's not like
exactly.
It's not like Britain has a massive Mexican population. I mean,
it's just people being offended on other people's behalf, which is insane. And you know, you start off with people perhaps, you know, being considered right-wing, but maybe not, just, you know, classic liberals or social conservatives. Their voices get closed down, but you know, eventually it's sort of just comedians now. You know, comedians who are edgy, who may have been, you know, grossly offensive in some of the things they've done 15 or 20 years ago, but they're now being closed down. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if someone would say Monty Python is offensive and
it wouldn't get made today, would it?
Closed down. You know, it couldn't be made. Exactly.
The joke about the in the Life of Brian, where he was like, I feel like a woman. It's like, you know, this is indicative of your struggle against reality. That's open hate speech and transphobia now. How dare you, sir?
This has just come out of nowhere, hasn't it? I mean, 5 years ago, no one had ever heard of transgenderism and transphobia. It's a new made-up word, and you know, suddenly objective scientific truth that everyone's accepted for millennia, since the dawn of time, is now considered hate speech. You know, facts are now hate. We're ending up in a very insane place. You know, a very Orwellian kind of culture that's been generated, and a lot of people are very, very worried. And you know, something I talk about a lot is this is being propagandized in schools, you know, and you know, I do appreciate that there are people with genuine gender dysphoria, you know, where there's nothing wrong with their bodies, there's something wrong with their mind. You know, this is what gender dysphoria is. You think you're in the wrong body, that your body's perfectly healthy. But I can understand that and sympathise with the mental anguish that people have. But you've got now a 4,000% rise in children presenting with gender dysphoria. I mean, this is not genuine gender dysphoria. This has been propagandised. Kids at a very young age have been confused.
Well, they actually have a term for it. It's, you know, a sort of colloquial term that's used on the internet, but they call them trans trenders. People who think that being trans is trendy, and so they claim to be trans, even though it's obviously a phase or an affectation. You know, and I completely agree with you. Like anyone who has genuinely got gender dysphoria, you know, we should be sympathetic to those people. We shouldn't treat them as if, you know, they're bad people or anything. They're not, obviously. But I agree with you. I don't think this should be propagandized in schools. I mean, you know, what an adult wants to do with their body is completely up to them. I'm totally supportive of the decisions they make, and I hope they work out brilliantly for them. But I really, I mean, I've seen too many examples of. There was an example in America that would really, I mean, this exemplified the entire problem with all of this. A young boy, like 7 or 8, had gone into class and they were drawing pictures, and he'd drawn someone in what looked like a purple dress, and he'd written a number on it, and the teacher, not understanding what was being represented, had said, well, look, this is proof that your child is transgender. What he'd actually drawn is his favourite sports star, with the 7 was the jersey, but it, you know, it was a 7-year-old child drawing it, so it wasn't exactly a particularly good representation. But they thought that was a dress because they didn't know what it was, and they were trying to basically push this on the father, saying, look, your son is transgender, you need to act like he's transgender. It was nonsense. It was utter nonsense.
Absolutely, and people are looking for this. They're actually looking for things that aren't there. And that's very dangerous, because then what they say is, well, the children should then have puberty-blocking hormones.
Yes.
You know, a boy should get their body pumped with estrogen with the age of 9, or a girl should get their body pumped up with testosterone at the age of 9 or 10. I mean, this is very, very damaging. You know, and then should have sex change hormones, which will leave them sterile. You know, all these kids who go through these hormone treatments will never have children of their own.
Yeah.
It's damaging the next generation beyond repair. It is actually quite wicked. I think.
I mean, people don't realise these are permanent decisions. I mean, I wouldn't want to make any permanent decisions at the age of 15, let alone at the age of 7 or 8. You know, but these are literally prepubescent children who are being fed puberty blockers and different hormones. And I mean, they like you say, you know, it makes them sterile, and so they can't have children. It gives them a high risk of cancer, gives them a high risk of suicide, and so it's just like to have the conversation be entirely in favour of making people transgender, rather than accepting that there is a pro and con to both sides, is, I think, very disturbing. And it's political correctness, as you say, that's being used to kind of as a weapon to cut down the opposing side without actually addressing the genuine problems that are coming along with this.
But this is the thing about political correctness, is that you might have a lot of people that would agree with me, and but are afraid to say so. I mean, I've seen sort of politicians from other parties go on television, and it seems that the BBC's favourite question to guests to see if they're right on these days are trans women women? You see, you know, Andrew Marr show or whatever, or the Breakfast Show, and they ask these questions to people, and you know, some people are afraid just to simply say no. Trans women are not women. You know, particularly if they've got male anatomy, they are men.
I mean, biologically, they've got XY chromosomes. You know, they don't have the anatomy. They have the physical bodies of men. I mean, you know, like I said, I'm more than happy to accept someone who wants to go through the effort of transitioning and say, right, I'll refer to them as she. I'm you know, out of politeness if nothing else. But this is, I tell you, I'm so glad you brought that up. Are trans women women? Because that's them saying, do you think right? You know, do you hold the correct opinion?
Exactly.
And I think that's beyond the pale.
And then if you have the wrong opinion, you get called a transphobe. And there's other issues as well. You know, if you have the wrong opinion on other LGBT issues, you're called a homophobe. If you have the wrong opinion on Islam,
don't even talk about Islam.
You have the wrong opinion on immigration, you're called a bigot or a xenophobe. You know, all these slurs get thrown at people simply for, you know, in order to try to cut down other people's opinions. If you don't have the politically correct sort of postmodern or neo-Marxist opinions, basically, or that adhere to the identity politics which we have in our country at the moment.
I completely agree with you.
All over the West, exactly. You know, to be honest, it's not just Britain. It's happening in Canada, Australia, other Sweden, particularly. You know,
it's horrific. So that brings us on to identity politics.
Okay.
I hate to bring this up, but I noticed that you're not white.
I'm not.
I wouldn't normally bring that up.
Well noticed.
That's the thing. It's the most embarrassing.
I'm half white.
It's the most embarrassing thing in the world, isn't it? Like I now have to talk to you about your race because this is what identity politics is. I mean, so would you like to give me your impression about it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a funny thing because when I was a kid, you know, when in the 70s and 80s, I was brought up, and there was a little bit of genuine racism around. Not much, but it was sort of there. It disappeared really towards the end of the 80s and 90s, and I went to university, and it was very nice. You know, the 90s were a brilliant time. I was young, and the Berlin Wall had come down. 9/11 hadn't happened. You know, it was such a time of positivity and optimism, and no one really cared, you know, about what colour you were, what gender you were, anything. None of this stuff really was a big issue. The person was a person, you know, and I really, you know, look back with fondness on those days. Maybe I'm turning into an old man who's got like nostalgia, but
I'm exactly the same though, because it wasn't. I mean, like I remember, you know, watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air with all my mates, and you know, we'd be like 13 or something. We sat around, oh, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is on, awesome. We'll love Will Smith, you know, we'll love Carlton. Nobody was ever like, wow, this is so diverse. We're so glad that we get to see a black family on TV. Nobody even thought about it.
No,
it was just
they were just people.
Yeah, exactly.
They were cool, and they were fun, they were funny, you know, and you enjoyed watching them. That was it. You
I just didn't think about it, and it's only now that now that they want to talk about race all the time. I think it really does encourage a kind of, if not like overt sort of, you know, neo-nationalist sort of, you know, angry, aggressive racism. It's very like paternal and condescending racism from the left.
Well, it's not just racism. It's it's gender issues. It's sexuality. It's race, ethnicity, religion. All of these things. It seems that everyone has been now. People are not seen as individuals, but they're seen as having a collection of group characteristics.
Yes.
So someone would look at me and they wouldn't see me as David. They'd see me. Oh well, you're male. You are mixed race, and you're whatever. You're straight. You're a Christian. These are your characteristics. So you fit in this box and this box and this box and this box, and then expect me to have this opinion because of this and this opinion because of that.
React in a certain way because of these characteristics as well.
And then the Equality Act 2010 writes this kind of intersectional theory and into British law, because you have all these protected characteristics, and you are treated perhaps better in some situations if you have protected characteristics. The whole issue of hate crime and hate speech is looking at if a crime is committed against someone with a protected characteristics, the police take it more seriously, because you can say, I perceive this was done to me because of hostility due to my characteristics. They will flag it up as a hate crime. They will put it as a priority to investigate. You have the BBC, ITV as well, offering training courses for non-white people only.
Yep.
We had Martin Luther King, the civil rights, in 1968, saying, I would hope for a society where people look at me due to the content of my character rather than the colour of my skin. Yep. And now we've gone full circle, and now people are putting disadvantages in your way, not because you're black, but because you're white.
I find it really amazing that
not really good.
I have to pay the BBC to racially discriminate against me. I haven't got a choice. I've got to pay the licence. And they can just say, well, you're white, so you're not eligible for certain things that we do. And it's like, why do I have to pay for that? Abolish the BBC. At least the licence fee. At least the licence fee.
The licence fee, indeed.
So, as a person who is mixed race, how do you find? One of the things that I heard a lot before joining UKIP, only from far left types admittedly, is that UKIP was a racist party. Do you find UKIP to be a racist party?
No, not at all. I think the Labour Party is far more racist than UKIP, and they have a huge problem with anti-Semitism. They had one of their MPs that liked and shared this hideous tweet, about the victims of Rotherham abuse. It was Naz Shah, I think.
Yeah, it was,
liked and retweeted that the victims of abuse in Rotherham should shut their mouths for the good of diversity. she took it down soon after, but the fact that she thinks that's something to share, it is indicative of what a hideous attitude that is. And so I've never found anything like that in UKIP. It's just it's mainly about leaving the European Union and lowering immigration, because rapid mass immigration of hundreds of thousands of people a year puts a massive strain on our public services and our housing. This is just simple common sense. Even a child can tell you this. If you build 100,000 houses a year and your population goes up by 600,000 a year, there's not enough houses for the people. So this is just a simple bit of mathematics and common sense, but that's a racist fact, these days. And so
it's a racist fact. I love it.
This is what you get from the far left.
Well, for me, the thing, I can understand when they say, we're not racist, we're criticising Zionism or something like that. And I say, well, some of you are, I can accept that some of you genuinely are like anti-Zionism. Zionism being an ideology, it's not just Jewish people who are Zionists. So that's fair game in the same way that I criticise feminism and yet I don't hate women, I criticise Black Lives Matter, I don't hate black people, but, there are critics. But for me, the thing that really bothered me is when the Labour Party, I think it was one of their conferences, where they had tickets for white people at £30 and the tickets for black people at £20. And it's just like, what are you doing? You're saying that black people are literally worth less than white people. And they were, again, this kind of paternalistic racism. They were, oh no, but they're struggling. It's like, that's really
So
insulting.
they think they own you.
Yeah.
The left thinks they own you if you have a protected characteristic. So me being mixed race, it confuses a lot of people on the left because, I would describe myself as a conservative, not anything to do with the Conservative Party.
Small c conservative.
I would say the Conservative Party is not conservative anymore. It's progressive, Blairite, liberal, social democrat party. I'm nothing to do with them, but I'm a small c conservative. But the left thinks they own you, because, or if you're a woman, they think you should vote Labour. If you mixed race, black, Asian, minority ethnic, you should vote Labour. If you're LGBT, you should vote Labour. They think they own all of these minorities. And when you say, well, I don't agree with your political opinions, it's very confusing to them.
But we know what you think because of your skin colour. How could you do this to us?
Well, isn't that racist? Isn't that, well, I didn't say racist, but paternalistic, colonialist, if you like. You've got these people, a lot of them are sort of, white people.
Most
and
of them
they
are
would
white
say
people.
to me, this is how you should think.
Yep.
How dare anyone tell me what I should think? I'm capable of thinking what I want and making up my own mind.
Well, that was the thing. There was a viral clip of a young lady and a young man in Antifa who, they were dressed in black, but their faces weren't covered. And a black chap from Liverpool was arguing with them. And he was saying, I don't agree with what you're saying. And they were like, well, you're black, you're a traitor to your race. And he's just like, unbelievably offended, understandably so.
Of course.
And they couldn't even understand that he's like, I don't just think in a certain way because I'm black, you racist, And it's so bewildering how unself-aware they are, and how they don't treat people as individuals. And I think it's absolutely disgraceful.
It's this whole idea of social justice warriors. They think that everyone needs their help.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to feel good about themselves, but I don't need their help. I'm capable of standing on my own 2 feet, thinking for myself, and doing what I want to do. I don't need to, think how someone tells me to think, or do what someone tells me to do. I'm able to make my own way in life, and this is the thing. And a very good person over in the USA. I haven't met her, but Candice Owens. She's a fantastic, role model for black people, because she talks about we should not have a victim mentality. And the left, in America, it's the Democrats, and here it's the Labour Party. They want black people to have a victim mentality, so they'll be dependent on them, keep voting for them, and they'll throw them a few crumbs of social security. What I like about Candice Owens is she says you should have a victor mentality.
Yes.
You have everything in you to be a victor, to win in life. And this is why black people in America are running to Donald Trump at the moment, because employment among the black community and the black population is higher than it's ever been, because he's creating jobs. He doesn't want black people to be dependent on the state. He wants black people to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, raise their own money, feed their own families, and be able to look after themselves.
That's normally something exactly. I would describe that as freedom. Being free from dependence on the state, free from other people's interference in your lives, in your thoughts. And I, like I say, the victor mentality. That resonates with me. That phrase, because exactly. Like life is a competition, and you've got to win. You've got to get out there and get into the London Assembly. There's nothing stopping you.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So. Is there anything else you'd like to have a chinwag about?
Gosh,
just anything that you want to raise that I'm not, things. What should I be asking? What would you like?
Well, we talked about all of these things. I go around and I do, as well as being on the London Assembly. I'm UKIP's education spokesman, so that keeps me busy as well. And I've been a teacher for a long time. So before I joined UKIP, actually a few years. Sort of concurrently, I was a chemistry teacher.
Right, okay.
I spent 20 years of my life nearly being a chemistry teacher. But so they made me education spokesman, which is fantastic. And so, one policy that UKIP's always had is that we support grammar schools, but we support technical schools as well. And I think, again, this is a sort of thing with working class people. I don't know if that's a patronising term or not, but
I don't think so. It's not been
been
politicised out of existence yet, I believe.
Yeah, grammar schools would be fantastic, because if you have grammar schools in areas which are like post-industrial places, coastal towns, Blackpool, so on, where there's not much hope, this gives people a leg up. And I see grammar schools as being a social good because it will help people who have an academic talent from all over the country, from all backgrounds, all wealth levels, to have a leg up into universities. And it's just surprising that the sort of on the left, you get people who say, grammar schools, they're segregation but they send their own kids to grammar schools and private schools as well. So you have absolute hypocrisy in some of these other parties. And I think that's another thing that attracted me to UKIP, because it just look at everything from a common sense point of view as what will work for people.
Yeah.
We want a country that works for ordinary people, but there seems to be so many things done which I wonder if it's just stupidity or incompetence or deliberate, because there's so many things that go on that make life difficult for people. I just want life to be easy, and so the government aids you and helps you in what you do, and you can just get on and live your life and make the best for yourself without all these obstacles thrown in your way. So that's why I'm here, and I hope I'll be elected again in some capacity, because I run out of my time here in 2020, but there's other elections, so we'll see what happens.
So can I ask you something quite controversial?
Okay. I don't know if I'll answer it.
Well, no,
depends how controversial it is.
Feel free to not answer.
Okay.
So there seems to be something of a schism between Gerard Batten and Nigel Farage over the subject of Islam. Because as far as I understand it, Nigel Farage believes that it's not the right time to address the question of radical Islam. And when I say radical Islam, I don't just mean jihadis. I mean, people in full burqas who, these are extremists, And Gerard Batten is concerned about this because it's something that he thinks is damaging the social fabric, as I understand it. And honestly, I'm inclined to agree with him on that point. And so Gerard Batten has been supporting Tommy Robinson and his interest in UKIP. Can I ask your opinion on that?
Yeah, look, they're both men that I have great respect for. Absolutely. Yeah. Nigel Farage was the leader when I joined the party. I have great and absolute respect for Nigel Farage. He's fought for Brexit for 25 years, and he's forced Cameron's government to have a referendum, won the referendum. So we got the possibility of coming out of the EU if we get things right. And I tremendously respect Gerard Batten as well, because the party was in a dire strait early this year, and he's done so much behind the scenes to put things right, put the party on a sound footing again, and there's a buzz about things, there's people joining, and so on. Both of them, I would agree with them on almost everything, but there would be some small things that I might not agree with them. What I would say about Islam and Islamism is we do have a big problem with these radical Islamist sects. You have Wahhabis and Salafists who are funded from Saudi Arabia. You have Tablighi Jamaat funded from Pakistan. You have Deobandis, and the Deobandi sect is not small.
No.
It's huge.
And it's the sect of the Taliban that they've adopted, and it is all across that sort of area of South Asia.
Yeah, Pakistan and Afghanistan. And we have a lot of people who are Muslims in this country who have a literal interpretation of the Quran and of the Hadith and the Sunnah and want Sharia law, would set up Sharia courts. You have this in Birmingham. You had the Trojan horse scandal where Wahhabis tried to take over, I think it was 21 secular schools. They were state schools. They weren't Islamic schools.
And for anyone who's not familiar with that, they were doing cruel and unusual things to the students, like making them stand out in the freezing cold rain on 1 foot or something, as a punishment, and very, very honestly quite barbaric punishments. And obviously there was a big investigation and nothing came of it. No. But
the trial unfortunately collapsed. So there's nothing going to happen to them, which is a disaster really for justice. You've got the grooming gangs, which is a horror. Yeah. We saw this weekend 20 men in Huddersfield, were jailed. Yeah. But the time they got in jail was ridiculous. It was minuscule. They were found
15
guilty.
15 years apiece or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, but there were 220 rapes.
Yeah.
120 rapes. Yeah. They're going to serve less than 1 year each in total. 220 years they got between them. They'll serve half their time, 110 years. So it's less than 1 year for every time one of these people has raped a child. I mean, this is the leniency of our court system. And you had Kevin Crean, he stuck a bacon sandwich outside a mosque.
Yeah.
Not a clever thing to do, perhaps, it's a bit provocative.
Yeah.
But no one was hurt.
Yeah.
Got sent to prison for a year and died. You know, they say he committed suicide, but in all likelihood, he had been, had his head beaten in by an Islamist or gang in the prisons, because they're very, very, aggressive and very much in control of a lot of the prisons. And
this is a problem that no one wants to talk about: is the radicalisation in prisons. And this was something that UKIP's manifesto was misrepresented on as well, wasn't it? Because UKIP, as far as I'm aware, are the only party who recognise the fact that there is a major problem with radicalisation in prisons, and so the suggestion was to separate the Islamic radicals from regular moderate Muslims to prevent them from radicalising them. And people said that this was going to be Muslim-only jails, which is not only ridiculous, but it also means that they don't want to address the issue.
Yeah, I mean, they're radicalisation factories.
Yeah.
Jails are not nice places. I hope I never go to one. But there's always gangs in jails.
Yeah.
You always need to join a gang for your protection, particularly in Category A, Category B jails, which are high security jails. I mean, the way of life must be horrendous. But, if you have a Muslim gang and you need to join that gang for your protection, so you convert to Islam, then you're part of their gang, you get radicalised, you have to go through all the motions, but probably, there's a big chance that people, actually become jihadis in jails. It's a huge problem.
And not only that, once you start forming these connections, when you leave, these connections don't just disappear. The people remember you and they'll find you and keep you in the...
Well, if you pretended, you say that you do the shahada, whatever it is, you stick your finger up and say whatever it is you say, then you become part of the ummah. So, if you do that, you can't leave.
Yeah, then you're an apostate, and we know what happens to apostates.
Well, the penalty for apostasy is death, if you take it literally, don't you?
Yeah.
But then, talking about this is Islamophobic.
Absolutely, how dare
It's
we?
another Islamophobic fact.
Yes.
That no one's willing to talk about because they're afraid of being politically incorrect. But unless you talk about it, it's going to go on and get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So I suppose that what it seems is that Jared Batten's interested in making UKIP a kind of multi-issue party, because obviously a lot of people assumed UKIP's just the party of Brexit, and it was, it genuinely was, and it won, frankly, when it came to Brexit. And
It really
is. It's a great victory for the regular person. But it occurs to me that there are other issues like Islam, like political correctness, like extreme gender ideology that UKIP is actually quite well positioned to address, because it's the party of the common people, and it's the common people who are suffering under this, who are having all this imposed from above on them. Do you think it's wise for UKIP to start branching out, or do you think they should?
I think we have been a multi-issue party for a long time, for a number of years. I mean, particularly the 2015 manifesto was very, very good. I mean, it addressed all the issues. Not just what you're talking about, political correctness and culture, but education, transport, police and crime, health. Social care, we have policies on all these things. And our new manifesto, which is just out this year in 2018, also has, all policies across all areas, so it's sort of like a full programme. But, we were known mostly for Brexit and also for talking about immigration, which is a big concern of a lot of people. I mean, it's not the concern of people in Islington.
I mean,
or the concern of people in Richmond Park. But
I don't want to have to listen to the racists in Sheffield. I mean...
you see, the people in this little London bubble, a lot of them have a very nice experience of immigration. They live in Hampstead or Richmond or Surrey or whatever, and their neighbours are ballerina from Russia, and then other neighbours are chartered accountant from Germany, and their kids play hockey together, and it's all very lovely.
Multiculturalism sounds wonderful under those circumstances.
But stick them in Sparkbrook in Birmingham, stick them in Savile Town in Dewsbury, they wouldn't last a second. This is what multiculturalism is. for people who don't have as much money as you, who aren't in your inner London bubble. They just cannot understand that. And what's so despicable about them is they continually call ordinary people racist, bigots, xenophobes, and have got no experience of what life is like for ordinary people in these places where their towns have changed beyond recognition. And it's not just about multiculturalism, it's about an increase in crime, where they don't feel safe in their own communities. Where they've been brought up.
The worst bit about it for me is I watched Channel 4, one of those sort of series on one of, I think it was Bradford, but a couple had been intimidated by an Islamist gang in their local area, and they went to the police, and I was most frustrated with the response of the police. Kind of a condescending, looking down their nose. Oh, really? Are you sure you're not just a racist, sir? That kind of attitude. It's like, you are obligated to investigate that. Come on. And that's the kind of sharp interactions that these communities have, where they're grinding against each other, and that it's one community is hurting another that is being washed over, frankly.
Yeah, and they won't get attention. They won't get real justice. They won't. They'll be at the bottom of the queue for housing. Other people jump ahead of them, and the people who live in the inner London BBC kind of bubble just don't understand that at all.
No,
they really have no clue.
It doesn't affect them. I mean,
I would like to take them and stick them in a council flat in the back end of Dewsbury on a social security for 3 months. If they did that, they would understand what it's like.
Yeah, and it is genuinely. They talk from a position of privilege, don't they? They genuinely are when it comes to this. And I completely agree. And this is exactly the experience that I've had. Frankly, travelling around a lot. People in large metropolitan centres, because it is so densely packed, and there are so many different people from so many different walks of life. You don't get the kind of monocultures emerging. So everyone is very different, and they are tolerant of one another. But then you go to one of the sort of northern English cities, and you find what are effectively colonies, where they're very monocultured and they're very insular, and they're not interested in, engaging with the outside culture. And I mean, what do you think can be done about that?
These things are built up over many, many years, decades. It's going to take as long to sort it out as it has to be built up. I mean, there's no silver bullet that you're going to say, well, okay, we got the solution that we can solve all these problems in a year. And what I do think is that we need low immigration from different cultures. That's to stop the problem getting worse, because there is a problem. You can call it with integration, you can call it with criminality. I mean, even Trevor Phillips, who was the chair of the Equalities and Human Rights Commission for many years, made a documentary a couple of years ago saying things that are true about race which we don't say, or something like that.
And he openly admitted that multiculturalism, his policies have failed. This was a mistake, and he wished he could take it back. It's like, okay, but we can't take it back, and we also can't talk about it without being called names. So we're kind of, our hands are tied. And
well, we can in UKIP. We can, which is why I'm here. But, even people in the Conservative Party are still afraid to talk about this because that's so politically correct. It's really a lefty party now. It's it's like they're left, Labour's hard left. The Conservatives are not conservative; they're soft left. But this one's going to kill you quickly, one's going to kill you slowly. But we have to be honest about this. Say these are problems. What can be done? We need to be proud of our country. We're all told, kids are told unceasingly in schools how bad Britain is. They're told the EU is good, Britain is bad, Britain created slavery, Britain created colonialism, Britain's did all these things that are wrong. So people are given a sense of shame about their own country. I mean, we need to change this, because this is a great country, it's a good country. There was slavery for 300 years, but this was the first, that was not good. Of course it wasn't, it was terrible. Common. But William Wilberforce, with other campaigners, got slavery abolished, and we're the first country ever in history of our own volition to abolish slavery. And because we did that, many other countries in the world, all through the Commonwealth that we've had influence over, don't have slavery either.
Well, we kind of forced that on them, actually, didn't we? I mean, like, I did quite a long video about this because I was fascinated the depth of Britain's, frankly, crusade against slavery. I mean, we patrolled the entire west coast of Africa, we blockaded Brazil, we ended the transatlantic slave trade, and then once that was effectively over, we went and did the same thing on the east coast of Africa with the Arab states.
Yeah, the Islamic slave trade, which no one talks about, which was far more brutal.
Yes,
and
went on for
I
far
don't want
longer.
to go into there because it would make people squeamish what they did to the men that they took up there. And the women
People should ask themselves, why is there not a large black population in Arabia? Because millions of black slaves for 1,000 years have been taken from the east coast of Africa to Arabia. So where are their descendants? And the answer is not pleasant. So you can Google that on your own. But okay, David, this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Lovely
really
to talk to
appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah, thanks.